Welcome back to another installment from the Seagulls Mazda 323 channel. Over the weekend I've been working on this car. I've discovered a few oil leaks, in particular coming from the camshaft seal and also somewhere in around the sump. I suspect it had been leaking from the main support bearing plate, or possibly an oil seal or gasket seal there on the sump. So I've gone ahead and removed all of that stuff, and in the meantime I've also painted the valve cover and top timing belt cover, which I will show you a bit later. So it's getting a major service. It's had a coolant dump, oil filter, oil pan gaskets, timing belt cover gaskets, and new camshaft and crankshaft seals, all done this weekend. Just working on getting this valve cover all tidied up, so I'll get that finished today. And I've painted my headers as well, gone with the black, couple of lightning bolts and a hell yeah! Get this bad boy going. So the valve cover's off, we painted that. The new timing belt's on. I've sussed out all the timing. I'm going to advance it a little bit further, maybe slightly over 10. When I'm running 95 on this and it's all hooked up like it should be with this double Weber. Damn, she picks up. She picks up for an old 30-year-old carbureted 1.6 litre 16 valve PG B62E engine. Now come with me underneath the car and I'll show you all the fun stuff. Right, so once you've got that oil pan or your oil sump off, there is only one way to take that off on this particular model, and that is to go to the block end and lever it gently with a paint scraper in to this corner. Fucking light. Into this corner here. You'll also have a sump stiffener plate, which I'll show you in a second, that needs to come off in order to get the last hidden bolts off to get the sump off. You need to take the pickup pipe off as well to get off this plate to give it a good clean, then replace the gaskets either end. So here and one there. So I'll show you what that looks like. So all cleaning all this up as well, both sides. Run a bead of, I use Black Label JB. It's probably the best stuff you can use. Just to quickly mention as well, in order to get to this point where the oil pan is off, numerous things will need to be taken off to get there. So I would start with the exhaust manifold. Take that off and disconnect it all the way back to, as you can see, the start of your center muff or center exhaust. I take it all the way back to there because otherwise it's going to be sticking right in the way of the oil pan. Once the manifold's off, you will also need to take off the sump stiffening plate, and then that'll give you access to all of the sump bolts. Undo all the sump bolts, squirt in some WD-40 penetrate and gently slide your paint scraper in at the block end to on the sump ear, and just wiggle your way through gently, and then give it a little tap with a rubber mallet and it should just drop off with a little bit of gentle prying. So that's your sump stiffener plate, which sits like this underneath the car. It is a cover for the sump, but also attaches and covering the flywheel and all that sort of stuff, or your clutch. So that'll need to come off. That was absolutely filthy and showing the signs of a leaking gasket. Here is the actual sump itself. And as you can see, I've got the rear gasket here. Rightio, with the sump pan off, the next step to do is to take the MSBP, the main support bearing plate, off, which is this thing here. It sits underneath the sump. It's also got gasket goo the whole way around. The only way to get this thing off is to pry it from this end, in this corner, underneath that. Nowhere else. And it'll slowly start to come away from the edge here, and just heavy spray of lots of WD-40 penetrate as you're prying, just softly prying, and then it should slowly start to give. But before you start taking this main support bearing plate off, you need to take off this. So it will be sump, then your oil pickup, which will sit like that here. Those two bolts I've just put back in, but it sits like that. So take that off. Then this bolt or an inverted torque, they sit, let's show you, here, 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 and closest to the flywheel here. So those are those torque keys here you'll need for the main support bearing plate. And when I took the oil pan off, I've already given this a good clean up. I noticed what was the cause of the leak from the oil pan, and it was the rear seal. So your front one here is, well, it's okay, but it still has its two prongs still attached at either end. So it wasn't the problem. Well, that does look a little bit average. It was the rear one, as I said. As you can see, the ends are snapped, and that was what was facing out, I guess. I found both of those in the bottom of the oil pan, so that was a big problem there. But anyway, that's fixed. I got new ones. Alright, well, with the main support bearing plate off, you'll be looking at this. So all in all, for an engine that's 30 years old, she's in pretty good nick in this side of things internally. You don't see anything out of place, that's for sure. That's alarming. We will give it a good clean and stick it all back together. And eventually, heavy duty clutch to go on there. Sweet! Making some good progress here, making some pretty good progress. Alright, got everything cleaned up and I'm ready to stick it all back together. And I'll show you what it all looks like. Right, so the timing belt is on and the tension pulley is all set correctly. And we've got that top timing belt cover on and it looks pretty good. Repaired, restored, and on. I've also done the valve cover. I went with the black, some white, and I'd done some custom blue and green splatting in there as well. Alright, looks pretty good. Alright, got those headers all sorted. Fresh gasket and a restored, cleaned up heat shield. Custom paint job as well on these. Hell yeah, Hurricane headers. The sump stiffening plate all cleaned up and looking nice, ready to get in. A nice clean sump with the oil pickup inside. And the main support bearing plate, all very clean and looking pretty much well brand new. So I like to use this stuff here. Of course, I'm not sponsored, but I will pass on the knowledge and skills that the big seagull has basically self-taught himself. And I know for a fact that this stuff here is the absolute bee's knees. Alright, so the main support bearing is back in, the oil pickup is fitted, and the oil pan covering everything, so that's all done. Timing belt covers are on. New oil filter in. Sump stiffening plate is on and clean. Now we just got to put the crankshaft pulley on, serpentine belt, power steering air cone belt, fill it with oil, check the leaks. But I have left something off, which is going to require a bit of modifications. Well, it's no wonder the car sounded like the way it did, with all of this garbage that was stuck underneath it. Yeah, that definitely all had to go. And I'll show you what's been put in now. Now come with me underneath the car and I'll show you all the fun stuff. While trying to retain a lot of the original hangers and stuff like that, we've gone for a low res muff with a twin on the back. Very period authentic for the 90s Mazdas. Moving right along, you can see all of that's been taken out. We've gone stainless all the way through, as straight as we can go. And that goes down to the high flow cat, onto a flex pipe, and then onto the header. Very good. Well, I'd like to say the job's done now. And I've even added a little tasteful sticker for you, seagull.